East Asia, Part 27.06. Summarize the effects of the Mongolian empires on the Silk Roads, including the importance of Marco Polo's travels on the spread of Chinese technology and Eurasian trade. 7.07. Analyze the achievements of the Ming dynasty and reasons for its isolationism, including building projects, for example the Forbidden City and reconstruction of the Great Wall, and Zheng He's sea voyages. 7.08. Describe the origins and central features of Shintoism, key persons, none, sacred texts, no sacred text, basic beliefs, localized tradition that focuses on ritual practices that are carried out with discipline to maintain connections with ancient past, animism and kami. 7.09. Explain how Japanese culture changed through Chinese and Korean influences, including Buddhism and Confucianism, as shown in the constitution of Prince Shotoku and the adoption of the Chinese writing system. 7.10. Describe how the Heian aristocracy contributed to the development of a Japanese national culture. 7.11. Analyze the rise of a military society in the late 12th century and the role of the shogun and samurai in Japanese society. In the 1200s, the Mongols rose to power under the leadership of Genghis Khan. He united the Mongol tribes and built one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. The Mongol Empire stretched from China to Eastern Europe, covering much of Asia. This huge empire had a big impact on trade and culture across the world. One of the most important effects of the Mongol Empire was its influence on the Silk Roads. The Silk Roads were a network of trade routes that connected China with Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Before the Mongols, these routes were dangerous because of bandits and wars between small kingdoms. But the Mongols created peace across their empire, called the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace. They protected merchants and travelers, which made trade safer and easier. As trade increased, many goods moved across the Silk Roads. Silk, spices, porcelain, paper, and gunpowder from China were traded for wool, glass, silver, and horses from Europe and the Middle East. But trade didn't only include goods. It also helped spread ideas, cultures, and technologies. Chinese inventions like the compass, printing, and gunpowder spread to other parts of the world. One person who helped share information about the East with the West was Marco Polo, a merchant from Venice, Italy. He traveled to China during the Mongol rule and visited the court of Kublai Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson. Marco Polo stayed in China for many years and wrote about his experiences. His book described the riches, inventions, and culture of China. Even though some people thought his stories were exaggerated, they encouraged more Europeans to explore and trade with Asia. The Mongol Empire made it easier for goods, people, and knowledge to move across continents. The Silk Roads became busier than ever, and Marco Polo's travels helped open Europe's eyes to the wonders of the East. After the fall of the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty, a new Chinese dynasty rose to power, the Ming dynasty. The Ming dynasty ruled from 1368 to 1644 and is known for restoring Chinese culture and strengthening the country. One of the first things the Ming emperors did was rebuild what the Mongols had damaged. They wanted to restore traditional Chinese customs and make China strong again. They are famous for their building projects, which showed the power of the emperor and the importance of Chinese culture. One major project was the reconstruction of the Great Wall of China. While earlier walls had been built, the Ming dynasty repaired and extended the wall to protect China from northern invaders. The wall we see today is mostly from the Ming period. It stretches over 13,000 miles and includes watchtowers and fortresses. Another famous project was the Forbidden City, a giant palace complex in Beijing. It became the home of the emperor and his court. With nearly 1,000 buildings, the Forbidden City was a symbol of imperial power and traditional Chinese architecture. Only the emperor, his family, and high-ranking officials were allowed inside, hence the name Forbidden. One of the most interesting events during the Ming dynasty was the series of voyages led by Zheng He, a Chinese explorer and admiral. Zheng He led 7 major sea voyages between 1405 and 1433. His fleet was massive, with hundreds of ships and thousands of sailors. He traveled to Southeast Asia, India, the Middle East, and East Africa. Zheng He's goal was not to conquer but to show off China's greatness and to build trade and diplomatic relationships. Even though the voyages were successful, later Ming emperors ended the explorations and chose a policy of isolationism. They believed that China had everything it needed and didn't want foreign ideas or influence. The government destroyed the ships and stopped overseas trade. As a result, China missed out on some global changes, including the rise of European exploration and trade. The Ming dynasty is remembered for its great achievements in building, art, and exploration, but also for its decision to turn inward and isolate itself from the world. Shintoism is the traditional religion of Japan. It is different from many world religions because it does not have a single founder or a sacred text like the Bible or Quran. Instead, Shinto is a local and ancient tradition that has developed over many centuries. The word Shinto means the way of the gods. It is a religion that focuses on nature, spirits, and rituals. Shinto teaches that spiritual beings called kami exist in nature and in all things, such as mountains, rivers, trees, animals, and even people. Kami are not gods in the way many people understand gods, but rather powerful spirits or forces of nature. Some kami are ancestors or important people from the past who are honored and remembered. A major belief in Shinto is animism, which means that all things have a spirit. Because of this belief, Shinto practices often focus on respecting and honoring nature. Shinto followers build shrines to house the kami and offer them food, water, and prayers. These shrines are special places where people go to pray for good fortune, health, and protection. Shinto also emphasizes rituals and discipline. These rituals help people stay connected to their ancestors and the past. Many of these rituals are performed during festivals or special times of the year. Cleanliness is also very important in Shinto, and people often wash their hands and mouth before entering a shrine. Shinto is not based on written scriptures or teachings from a holy book. Instead, it is a set of practices and beliefs passed down from generation to generation. Even today, many Japanese people practice Shinto rituals, especially during holidays, weddings, and New Year celebrations. Japan has a long history of borrowing and adapting ideas from other cultures, especially China and Korea. During the early centuries of its history, Japan looked to its neighbors for new ways of governing, writing, and understanding the world. One of the most important influences was Buddhism, which came to Japan from Korea and originally from India. Buddhism taught about reincarnation, karma, and the path to enlightenment. Many Japanese people accepted Buddhist ideas, and temples were built across the country. However, instead of replacing Shintoism, Buddhism mixed with it. People often practiced both religions at the same time. One of the most important influences was Buddhism, which came to Japan from Korea and originally from India. Buddhism taught about reincarnation, karma, and the path to enlightenment. Many Japanese people accepted Buddhist ideas, and temples were built across the country. However, instead of replacing Shintoism, Buddhism mixed with it. People often practiced both religions at the same time. Confucianism, another major Chinese belief system, also influenced Japan. Confucianism is not a religion, but a set of teachings about how people should behave. It focuses on respect for elders, loyalty, hard work, and education. These ideas helped shape Japanese society, especially how families and government worked. One of the clearest examples of Chinese influence is the Constitution of Prince Shotoku. Prince Shotoku was a Japanese leader in the 600s who admired Chinese culture. He wrote a set of rules to help organize the Japanese government. His constitution was based on Confucian and Buddhist ideas. It encouraged harmony, respect for authority, and moral behavior among officials. Another major influence was the Chinese writing system. Japan did not have its own writing at first, so it adopted Chinese characters called kanji. These characters were used to write Japanese words and helped develop Japan's written language. During the Heian period, 794–1185, Japan developed a rich and unique culture. The capital city was Heian-kyo, now called Kyoto. At this time, the emperor's court was full of nobles who followed strict rules about behavior, clothing, and art. This group of wealthy and powerful people is called the Heian aristocracy. The Heian aristocracy played a big role in shaping Japanese culture. They loved beauty, art, and poetry. Nobles competed to write the best poems and tell the best stories. People spent a lot of time thinking about how to dress, speak politely, and follow customs. One of the most famous works of literature from this time is The Tale of Genji, written by Lady Murasaki Shikibu, a noblewoman. It is often called the world's first novel. The story tells about the life and loves of a nobleman named Genji and gives us a window into court life during the Heian period. Art and fashion were also important. Nobles wore colorful robes made of many layers. They painted scenes from nature and created beautiful calligraphy. They practiced religious rituals, both Shinto and Buddhist, and followed court ceremonies carefully. The Heian period is seen as a golden age of Japanese culture. Even though the emperor had little political power during this time, the aristocracy helped create a national identity based on art, tradition, and beauty. By the late 1100s, Japan began to change. The emperor and his court were losing power. Local landowners, called daimyo, gained more control. These daimyo had private armies made up of samurai, skilled warriors who followed a strict code of honor. The rise of these powerful military families led to the beginning of a military society. In 1192, a military leader named Minamoto Yoritomo was given the title of shogun, which means supreme general. The shogun became the real ruler of Japan, while the emperor remained a figurehead with no real power. The samurai who served the shogun and daimyo followed a code called Bushido, or the way of the warrior. This code focused on loyalty, bravery, discipline, and honor. Samurai trained in martial arts and were willing to die for their lord. If a samurai was dishonored, he was expected to commit seppuku, or ritual suicide, to restore his honor. During this time, Japan faced many internal wars as different daimyo fought for power. This period is sometimes called the Age of the Warring States. It lasted until the 1600s, when Japan was finally unified under one leader. The rise of the shogun and the military class changed Japanese society. Power was no longer held by the emperor and nobles, it belonged to the warriors. This system, called feudalism, shaped Japan for hundreds of years.